All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle one of the biggest questions ever. Seriously, it's a question that has completely flipped our understanding of the universe on its head, time and time again.
So think about this. Is space just nothing? An empty void? Or is it everything? I mean, really, is it just a backdrop for all the stars and galaxies? Or is it the actual source of reality itself? People have been arguing about this for centuries, and trust me, the answers have changed everything we thought we knew.
Okay, so our story has to start with the man himself, the father of modern physics, Isaac Newton. He gave us the first really solid and honestly super intuitive idea of what space is all about.
For Newton, it was simple. Space was this absolute unmoving thing. Think of it like a giant invisible box that contains the entire universe. All the planets, the stars, everything. They're all moving around inside this box. But the box itself, it never moves. It's the ultimate stage, the fixed background against which everything else happens.
Now here's the cool part. How do you prove something exists if it's invisible and unmoving? Well, Newton came up with a brilliantly simple experiment. All he needed was a bucket and some water.
Okay, let's break this down. The really interesting part is step 3. The bucket and the water are spinning at the same speed. So relative to each other, they're perfectly still, right? But look at the water. It's climbing up the sides, it's concave, there's a real force acting on it. So Newton asked this genius question. If the water isn't moving relative to the bucket, what is it moving relative to?
And that was his aha moment. That curved water, for Newton, was the smoking gun. It was physical proof of his invisible, absolute space. It had to be spinning relative to something, and that something was the fixed stage of the universe itself.
But, not everyone was buying it. This idea of an invisible, unmoving stage, it felt a little, ghostly. And about 200 years later, this whole container idea was about to get completely blown out of the water.
You had thinkers like Leibniz who were saying, hold on a second. They argued that space isn't a thing on its own. It's just the relationship between things. So if you could magically remove every object from the universe, poof, space would vanish too, because there'd be nothing left to relate to each other.
And this whole debate was the perfect setup for the next big revolution. Enter Albert Einstein. In 1915, his theory of general relativity didn't just tweak Newton's idea, it threw it out. Space was no longer a passive stage. It became one of the main characters in the story of the cosmos.
This quote just nails it. It's a two-way street. Matter tells spacetime how to curve, and that curved spacetime tells matter how to move. Suddenly, space wasn't this rigid, boring background anymore. Heavy objects could literally bend it, warp it, stretch it. Newton's static box was gone. In its place, we got this dynamic, four-dimensional fabric called spacetime.
So, case closed, right? Space is dynamic, it's relational, problem solved. Well, not so fast. Because as we started looking deeper into the universe's history in the 20th century, we found something weird. A kind of ghost of Newton's old idea, hiding in plain sight.
What you're seeing here is literally the oldest light in the universe. It's called the cosmic microwave background, the CMB for short. It's basically the leftover heat from the Big Bang, and it fills all of space. And when we started studying this ancient light, we found something pretty mind-blowing about where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, that number is wild. 369 kilometers per second. That's how fast our solar system is hurtling through space relative to the CMB. It turns out there actually is a preferred frame of reference for the universe, a cosmic rest frame that we can measure our own speed against. And this is a huge puzzle, right? Because, wait a minute, didn't Einstein prove all motion is relative? If that's true, how can there be this universal backdrop that we're moving against? It's like Newton's old idea of absolute space just came roaring back from the dead. So, while physicists are scratching their heads over this paradox, let's pivot for a second. Let's look at a totally different way of thinking about this from the world of philosophy, and it's a view that completely reframes the entire question. This philosopher, Vethathiri Maharshi, had a radical idea. He said, what if space isn't empty at all? What if it's the exact opposite? He called it a plenum, which just means it's absolutely full. In his view, space itself is the fundamental substance of reality. It's this conscious, all-powerful source, the Almighty, as he put it, from which everything else is born.
And this space isn't just sitting there. He said it has 4 built-in properties, kind of like the universe's DNA. First, it's a plenum,
a state of fullness that's the source of all matter. Second, it has an inherent force, a constant self-compressing pressure. Third, and this is a big one, it has consciousness. Now, we're not talking about feelings or thoughts, but the fundamental order of the universe, what we call the laws of nature. And finally, time, which he saw as the natural, rhythmic vibration of space itself.
Okay, so if you accept this radical new idea of space, it completely changes how you have to think about the most familiar force of all, gravity.
See, pretty much our whole understanding of gravity, from Newton all the way to Einstein, is that it's a pull. Things attract each other. But in this new model, it's the complete opposite. Gravity is a push.
So how does that even work? Imagine this full space is putting an immense, even pressure on everything, from every direction. Now, you put two planets near each other. They kind of shield each other from some of that pressure, creating a low-pressure zone, or a shadow, right between them. So what happens? The pressure on the outside of the planets is now greater than the pressure between them, and boom, they get pushed together. What we call attraction is really just an illusion caused by being pushed from the outside.
All right, so let's step back. What we have now are two very powerful and very, very different pictures of what space and reality itself actually is.
On one hand, you have modern science. It started by studying matter and particles, and it worked its way up to discovering that, hey, space isn't empty after all. It has energy, it acts like a fluid, and it even has a preferred frame. Then you have the Vatantharian view, which does the complete opposite. It starts with this idea of a conscious fundamental space, and then explains how matter and energy are just expressions of that space.
I mean, think about the journey we've just been on. We went from Newton's simple, empty container to Einstein's stretchy, bendy spacetime. And now we're looking at the idea that space could be a living, conscious being that is the source of everything.
So that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Which story is the right one? Is reality a story that starts with matter, which then somehow gives rise to consciousness? Or is matter just a story being told by a fundamental, universal consciousness? Whichever one it is, finding the answer? Well, that's probably the next great scientific revolution.